Sunday Sangha offering in this series. This year's series will focus on the relationship between the Insight Dialogue guidelines and practice and Buddhist wisdom teachings. And today our practice will be led by Phyllis, Hicks, and Lori Ebert. And just a reminder, if any time during this session, if anyone needs support, a few of us will be in the main room at all times. Please don't hesitate to come and seek us out. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Phyllis for those who may not be as familiar. I'm looking at the screen and seeing that's probably unlikely. Phyllis Hicks has been engaged in the Insight Dialogue community for approximately 20 years. She is a treasured retreat teacher, and she has been instrumental in mentoring and shepherding many of us in the teaching community through the development process, as well as in supporting ongoing cohorts. Phyllis is the former chair of the Insight Dialogue Teachers Council and continues to serve on this team. She is a co-developer of the interpersonal mindfulness program, as well as teaches mindfulness-based stress reduction. And she's also a guiding teacher for Triangle Insight in her home state of North Carolina in the US. We are quite fortunate today that you said yes, Phyllis, to the invitation to guide our practice. Phyllis's approach to transmitting the Dhamma is both well-grounded and quite expansive, most often ending with a smile and the question, what do you think? So thank you so much, Phyllis, for today. And if you would be so kind as to introduce Lori to us.
Thanks so much, Anita, for that kind introduction. So I'd just like to say a few words about Lori, and I'd like to speak from my personal experience. I've known Lori for at least 20 years, I think, maybe more. And it was her interest in Insight Dialogue that actually brought Greg out to North Carolina, so that's when I first met him. She was so drawn to the practice herself. She noticed how much happier it made her when she was interacting with people, and it gave her a sense of really being grounded at the same time, intimate with what was unfolding in the moment. Lori has so many skills, and she's been very generous in bringing those skills to the community. And probably many of you have read the guide that she and Greg wrote on practicing skillfully offering the Insight Dialogue guidelines. She was a researcher, and she's a psychotherapist. And so she's been able to bring all those skills. At a certain point, she took on serving the Insight Dialogue community. She joined the Guiding Sangha, and gratefully started receiving livelihood support so she could dedicate herself more fully to service. In September of 2023, Lori developed a medical condition that causes severe debilitating pain and was unable to do the things and fulfill the roles that she has taken so much joy in fulfilling. Many of us in the community have entered into a deep relationship with Lori. And in fact, it is as a community that we've met some of the difficulties that she encounters together. I'd like to, we never expect that something is going to happen that simply sweeps our life as we know it away. This recently has happened in North Carolina for a lot of people. A hurricane came through our mountain area and people's homes were literally swept away. Livelihoods, everything. And the teachings are really aimed at allowing us to meet the inevitability of loss with some compassion and some wisdom. So I want to invite you now for just a few moments to pause and to take in this reality that Lori has experienced, but many, many experience daily now in our world of suffering, impermanence. Of not being able to find a sense, an enduring sense of identity in the midst of change. So just pausing and allowing the knowing. This is why the Buddha taught suffering and the end of suffering and a path. So finding any ways that this perhaps resonates with your own life experience. And tenderly, tenderly turning towards this suffering. Noticing any tension in the body as you allow the reality of loss, of change to touch. And pausing to find the body breathing. Connecting with the in-breath and the release of the out-breath. Noticing your mental states, feelings, this flood of sensory information. That creates a sense of this body sitting, breathing, allowing the knowing. Perhaps allowing the awareness to be spacious like the sky, including all experience. Gently inviting whatever can relax to relax. And accepting what remains. It's like this now in this body. And if for any reason the sense of the body isn't quite accessible, perhaps just tuning to the sound of my voice. Noticing the rising, the gap between the words. Just coming home to the knowing and opening. More fully to the experience of being here now. Finding the body breathing and listening. Attuning to this moment of experience. including everything. Nothing to push away, nothing to change. Simply being here now with what's here now. We can notice what's may still be reverberating, whatever conditioned perceptions, and incline towards the unconditioned. Noticing just even small moments of cessation. Of letting go. Of not clinging to the past or projecting into the future. Embracing the noble truth of suffering. Change. And the capacity to open, to be part of this dynamic flow of experience. With compassion.
Hi.
In a moment, you'll hear Lori's voice. She'll be joining us through a recording today. She is here. You can listening and participating. You might notice that there's some gaps in her speaking, and we invite you simply to pause, relax and open, attune to emergence, and just listen.
I, my fellow practitioners and teachers have often raised the question of whether the Dhamma and insight dialogue really make a difference in this troubled world. I cannot speak to this in a broader sense, but for me personally, the Buddhist teachings, insight dialogue, and this community have been the most important support in making it possible for me to navigate this incredibly difficult time. My understanding is that the focus of Sunday Sangha this year is wisdom in the context of insight dialogue. So what exactly is wisdom as articulated in the Dhamma? In the suttas, the Buddha frequently uses the term Samma to preface his teachings. For example, the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path are spoken to as Sammaditthi, a right view, Sammasankappa, a right intention, Sammavaca, a right speech, and so forth. Because of this illness, I can only work at the computer for about 25 minutes at a time. After that, I have to take a break of at least 10 minutes, where the pain and nausea worsen considerably. Sticking with this schedule is an act of compassion, a challenging one for someone who is used to being able to work for hours on end. When I'm feeling well enough, I listen to Dhamma talks in those breaks. When I'm not, I typically listen to an audiobook or a podcast. Not too long before Phyllis invited me to offer Sunday Sangha with her, I listened to a talk Ajahn Amaro gave at Spirit Rock, the name of which Nancy, our Zoom host, will place in the chat box. There he spoke to observing in recent years that in places, especially in more liberal ones, there seemed to be a growing discomfort with the term right. Instead, many had started using the term wise. He attributed this to a desire not to judge. For example, he noted that on the prayer wheel going up to the top of the property at Spirit Rock, the components of the Eightfold Path are listed as wise view, wise intention, wise speech, and so forth. But according to Ajahn Amaro, the Samma of the Eightfold Path is not the right of right versus wrong, but rather a right as an upright or balanced. He goes on to say that a Samma is also a musical term. So when the strings of a lute are Samma, they are in tuned or in tune. As anyone who plays a string instrument knows, these have to be adjusted repeatedly in response to changing conditions. According to Ajahn Amaro, that is the rightness of Samma in the Buddhist teachings. For instance, right view is a view that is attuned to how things are in the present moment. Similarly, Sammakamanta, a right action, is doing the righted thing, or acting in a way that is attuned to how things are in this moment. This is reflected in the term anicca, one of the three characteristics of existence. Anicca, one of the three characteristics of existence Anicca, one of the three characteristics of existence are permanent and constantly changing. I share this teaching with you out of the joy and excitement I experienced lying on my couch and hearing a respected teacher speak to how the Dhamma seemed to apply to my immediate experience at this time of profound pain and loss. More specifically, what Ajahn Amaro described is very much aligned with how the members of this community have offered a variety of kinds of support that are attuned to what was needed in this present moment. Despite the many demands on his time since I became ill, Greg has phoned often. Over this time, Greg, along with the other members of the Insight Dialogue community, have evidenced an increasing ability to attune to what is needed at any given moment. Sometimes Greg offered teachings or practices. This provides the gift of learning how to apply the Dhamma to navigate challenging circumstances. Other times he offered words of compassion, which I could draw on throughout my day, or simply express the care of a friend. As indicated by the photo on the screen, I find spending time with children a source of tremendous delight and boundless metta. Therefore, recently, when I was experiencing severe pain, and I knew that Greg's grandchildren were visiting, I asked them to describe what it was like to be with them that day. One thing that stuck with me was his describing how he, his grandchildren, and daughter-in-law had transformed a place in the woods where Greg often meditates into a magical grove, where they did things like building fairy houses. During difficult times, I've often found solace in imagining being there and observing them. For me, Greg's willingness to be flexible and attuned to what might be needed at any given moment feels very much aligned with what Ajahn Amaro described as Sama. Aware of how insight dialogue often brought me back to the path when the mind was mired in reactivity, a former member of the guiding Sangha set up a care circle organizing things so that friends who felt comfortable doing this could reach out to me regularly to practice insight dialogue. Most of the time, my partner and I did just that. However, in accordance with what Ajahn Amaro described as Sama, we did not limit ourselves to insight dialogue practice. For example, one evening when I was experiencing a lot of pain and grieving not being able to travel and visit loved ones, another friend from the guiding Sangha helped me journey across the country and into the present moment by describing what she saw and heard on a walk through the woods earlier that day. Later, at my request, she sent me some photos of plants she had seen that I wasn't familiar with. After realizing that the pain and fatigue I experience can make it difficult for me to cook, another care circle participant set up a meal train. Because of how spread out our community is, it wasn't possible for people to bring me food. So instead, they created a Google document where people could sign up to get a gift card, allowing me to purchase a meal for a particular week. Initially, I experienced a good deal of discomfort in accepting these, seeing it as further reflection on my increasing weakness and vulnerability. And to a certain degree, this is present, and I speak to you about this now. One thing that helped was seeing these offerings as part of a long tradition where food dana is often offered to Sangha members. Requesting to meet on Zoom with persons who had offered meal dana and to explore together the experience of giving and receiving allowed me to open to this more fully. Once again, for me, this is Samakamanta, or right action, open to relationship to discern what might be beneficial. I find myself searching for a way to close this talk that reflects some kind of wisdom, but bringing to mind the concept of Sama that have had the privilege to explore with you today. That can only occur in the moment, living a whole life path in relationship. This is something you will have the opportunity to consider together, supported in contemplations Phyllis will offer. I bow with profound gratitude and boundless metta and deep humility to all who have held my hand and helped me find my way back to the path and blinded by pain, loss, and self-judgment, a journey that continues to this day. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori, for that teaching. So we'd like to invite you now into dyads to spend just a bit of time tenderly touching the realities of your life in the present moment. Where are you aware of suffering, impermanence, of there not being a stable sense of role, identity, self? And how are you attuning to change in your life? We have the beautiful support of a listening other. Mindfulness has a way of being amplified when we practice together. So letting the guidelines, all the guidelines, support you. Now, and we'll be spacious with this. We'll, when you come into your rooms, just pause for a moment and introduce yourself to each other if you don't know each other. A kindness in this very real human life, in the midst of so much that can't be known, to actually connect. And then decide who will be the first speaker and who will be the first listener. And you'll have about 10 minutes to each of you to explore this. And then we'll have another 10 minutes to open dialogue. And we'll place some prompts so that you'll be able to follow. You'll have some prompts for when to change. Okay, so the contemplation, again, where are you aware of suffering, impermanence, and no stable sense of self in your life now? And how are you attuning to these changing conditions? Supporting each other by practicing all the guidelines. Enjoy your practice. So welcome back, friends. One of the ways the Dhamma has been summarized is as an appropriate response. Another way that Bhikkhu Analayo has talked about practice as to keep calmly knowing change. So we invite you now just to feel free to unmute yourself and to share into the room any wisdom that may have arisen for you, any way in which you feel nourished by this contemplation. Now, for us to shift to our closing. Thank you all for your practice, for giving yourself to each other, and for receiving, being so generous to receive what Lori and I have offered. Thank you. And we feel so blessed by these teachings, and they have been a path of liberation, continue to be an ongoing path of liberation for us. We very much would like to invite you to offer dana today. And rather than offering the dana to Lori and I, to offer dana in support of a sister meditation community in the mountains of North Carolina called Southern Dharma. So if you feel moved at all to offer support, we suggest that you do so using the link that Nancy will place in the chat. And because so many of our friends in that region, they've never seen a flood of this. It's totally catastrophic, and their homes, everything for some of them have been washed away. They have no clean water, no electricity. They really are still in crisis mode, some of them. So it's beautiful to see how people help people when we turn with courage and clear seeing towards the suffering that is already here, and keep attuning to changing conditions. And of course, this is happening all over the world. May our hearts be wide as the world. May the benefits of our practice be shared with all. May whatever is inspired in our heart be a gift to the hearts of others. May we see the path clearly and walk it in peace. May there be peace. May there be peace. May there be peace. Thank you, dear friends, for your practice.
Thank you, everyone.